It's as if the practice of medicine is not difficult enough. Now we have to worry about going to prison for compliance reasons. In this video, I'm going to share with you how a dentist literally went to prison for healthcare fraud and racketeering. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is John Lin. I'm a urologist in Gilbert, Arizona at Sunrise Urology, also your humble host of the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group, where we crowdsource practice management solutions for everyone's benefit. And this is being streamed live on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have any questions, comments regarding this situation, please feel free to leave them below. I want to first say a welcome to all the new members who have joined the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group. Thank you for coming and contributing. It is free, so feel free to invite your colleagues or anyone who work in urology to join us in the fun and frivolities. When it comes to practice management, when it comes to running a medical practice, I'm a sponge. I love reading and gathering information from all aspects of medicine and also other fields besides medicine, in customer experience, in psychology, in relationships. So I try to gather information from all different sources. And one of these sources is a podcast called Raving Patients Podcast by Dr. Len Tau. In his latest podcast, and let me share with you, the latest podcast that I heard is called Clinical Record Keeping Mistakes That Could Doom Your Practice. In this podcast that was released, today? Yeah, today. He interviewed Dr. Shelburne, who's a dentist who served 19 months in a Kentucky prison because the government overpaid him after all the audits are done, about $17,000. And because he took that money that was overpaid to him and he put it in a bank and he spent it on employees and running his practice, now that became healthcare fraud and racketeering. Now, you may be thinking, well, that could be an honest mistake. It most likely was, but it doesn't matter. You had an overzealous prosecutor who's out to make a name for himself, who prosecuted Dr. Shelburne, and it ended up, he thought he was going to have to go to prison for 15 years, but it ended up being 2 years, and he served 19 months in prison. We're not talking about some jail. This is prison, okay? So in the podcast, he goes over what happened, and he talks about things that you can do to avoid this from happening. I think he was released from jail back in 2010. Now he's a speaker going across the country to warn dentists how to avoid getting into jail. And I will leave in the show notes, in the video description, the link to his podcast, and you can listen to the interview yourself. You can certainly search for Dr. Shelburne online, and you will be able to see articles. And speaking of articles, there's an article from Dentistry IQ, or Dental Economics, from 2010. The title of the article is called Document by Penny Anderson, who's a senior editor at Dental Economics. And now it says that Dr. Shelburne is on a mission to inform dentists with an important message. And that message is document. And I'm going to go over his story and how it pertains to urology and how it pertains to medicine. So he was released from a halfway house on May 14th in 2010. And 72 hours later, he was at a meeting in Anaheim and he was interviewed. He did a video interview, and I will also link this article in the video description so you can look at it yourself. Dr. Shelburne said he spent a lot of time writing while he was in prison, and he heard from a lot of people in the dental community from all over the U.S. He had outpouring support, which he thought it was amazing, and he appreciated all the support from the dental community to help him and his family. Just imagine being taken to jail or prison, being removed from your family, and he's married with a child, with children. So imagine that happening to you, and you are just doing your best, taking care of your patients, performing healthcare, performing dentistry. So he did not intentionally try to defraud the government, but the overall circumstances led to his conviction and imprisonment. So let's go on here. Shelburne said that going through this ordeal, being in prison, helped him focus on what's really important and why it's important. I'm sure it did. Anytime you are thrown in prison, that is a serious, serious ordeal. So this editor interviewed Dr. Shelburne, and she also interviewed 2 expert witnesses who testified on Dr. Shelburne's behalf during trial. And one dentist, who Dr. Susan Phillips, is an insurance consultant with a claims review organization. She's from a claims review organization. Now, she's been a consultant on claim reviews for many, many years, and she told the interviewer that after reviewing all of the documentation about the dentistry performed in this case against Dr. Shelburne, she felt the charges did not have merit because she saw no pattern or scheme to defraud. And I'm very familiar with what to look for because reviewing claims and records for fraudulent or suspicious submissions is a routine part of my job. And I will interject here. This is no different in urology and healthcare. Anytime a payer is requesting records to look at your records, this is a mini audit. They are looking to make sure you are compliant and make sure the documentation is all there, make sure the signature is all there. Whether or not they are right, you may be dragged through this ordeal. So it would behoove you to make your documentation, your clinical documentation, as easy, as clean as possible so that any high schooler can look at the documentation and say, yep, he or she is actually in compliance with the regulatory guidance from the government. Now, you may be thinking, well, I don't participate in Medicare. I don't participate in TRICARE care or Medicaid. I'm exempt. Wrong. If you accept any plan under the, I call it Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever it is, if you accept a plan from the ACA, boom, you're on the hook. You have to comply by those rules. It is as simple as that. If you accept TRICARE, boom, you're on the hook. You have to comply with the government's sometimes insane rules. So let's go on here. Okay. What Dr. Phillips, this consultant, did see was a doctor who had delegated more duties to his staff, as many doctors do, but who did not provide adequate oversight of what his staff was doing and how they were carrying out their responsibilities. There are Medicare rules that require general supervision versus direct supervision. And it is your responsibility as a healthcare provider, a physician, MDDO, whether, or you may be an APP, advanced practice provider, a nurse practitioner or PA. If you are billing Medicare, it is up to you to make sure you understand what is required when it comes to supervision. You can't just let the staff do its own thing without overseeing what they're doing. For instance, when it comes to prescription drugs, I will look through all the prescription drugs. You may have a policy where you have clearly documented workflow and your staff can do the refills. I personally do not feel comfortable doing that, so I look through all the medication refills. I also look through all the medical record requests. I will look through them, the requests, make sure that they're legit before they're signed off. Every claim, everything that comes out of the office that gets billed, it goes through me. I have to look through it. I have to make sure the documentation is there. I have to make sure that the CPT code's correct, current procedural terminology, copyright AMA, American Medical Association. I have to make sure the CPT codes are correct. If there's a modifier used, I have to make sure that they are correctly used. It doesn't matter who puts the modifiers in. It doesn't matter who puts a CPT on the electronic medical records. The ultimate responsibility rests on the person who is actually billing Medicare, billing the government, billing the private payer. The physician typically is the one with the deepest pocket, with the highest insurance coverage, medical malpractice insurance coverage. Insurers and plaintiffs are going to go after you. Not so much the biller, not so much the PA or the NP, because they don't have a lot of assets typically. So they're going to go to someone with the deepest pockets. And besides, anytime that claim form is sent to any payer or CMS or the government, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as Medicare, anytime that claim is sent there, you are on the hook. Anytime you submit the claim and sign electronically, you are testifying to the accuracy and validity of every code that goes on a claim, and every ICD-10 or diagnosis code that goes on a claim. Saying that, oh, my biller did that, or my billing company did that, is no excuse. So there's something called willful ignorance and something called disregard or something disregard, but intentional disregard or something like that. The bottom line is, just because you don't know these rules that may apply to you, it does not excuse you, unfortunately. Just because you don't know the rules that pertain to you does not excuse you from prosecution. This is how crazy it is. This is how crazy healthcare is, and the insane rules that we have to know in addition to taking care of patients, the unrealistic expectation of a perfect outcome on every single patient for every procedure. On top of that, practicing perfect medicine, you now have to comply with these rules. Unfortunately, if you take payments from any of these governmental run agencies, you are on the hook. Let's go back to this article. Basically, insufficient oversight over what his staff was doing and how they were carrying out their responsibilities was, in essence, what got Dr. Shelburne in trouble. And so now Dr. Shelburne had come to the realization in the time he has had to review his actions, and he stated, when you are called on to give an account of what you did and why you did it, it is not good enough that you relay that after the fact. It has to be part of the permanent record. Medicare is very clear in the past evaluation and management documentation guidelines that it literally says, if it's not documented, it is not done. You can't be on the stand during trial to explain, oh, I did this, I extracted this tooth, I put this crown on, or I did a cystoscopy, or I did a biopsy, or I did a urolift. After the fact, explaining why you did it. Instead, you have to write down the patient's symptoms, the discussion regarding the treatment options, the ultimate decision for the treatment option, the carrying out of the procedure, the pre-op workup, and you have to write it all down so that any layman pretty much can understand why you did a particular procedure. Trying to explain why you did it while you're on the stand is too late. And the good folks at PRS Network, Mark Painter, the Painters, Dr. Ray Painter, myself, anybody in coding, billing, compliance, we have been telling you that you have to clearly document everything that you do. Let this serve as an example. Dr. Shelburne, who had to go to prison for 19 months and pay a fine and penalties. I believe it was $300,000 for a $17,000 infraction. The civil monetary penalties can be multiple of every claim that the government says that you messed up on. So it doesn't matter who messed up. It could be the billing, the coding staff. It could be your support staff that put in the wrong codes. It doesn't matter. You, the physician, is the billing provider, is ultimately on the hook. All right, let's go back to this. Dr. Shelburne said, one of the most difficult times for me during the trial was sitting on the witness stand and being cross-examined by the prosecution. He asked why I provided a particular service. I outlined why I did it, and the prosecutor went back to my patient record and said, well, that's not explained completely in this record. So how do you justify what you did then when you did not fully record it? This seems like you are saying this to protect yourself after the fact. Again, you need to write it down, not just write it down, you want to write it down contemporaneously, meaning right after the procedure is done. I know it's a huge pain in the ass to have to think about the care that you're giving to the patient, try to be perfect, and then perform the procedure as perfect as possible, and now you have to write it down in detail. It's a huge pain in the butt. There are ways to overcome that. You can try to template it. You can use a virtual assistant. You can use an actual in-person scribe to help you document all this. You can use voice recognition, which is what I use. But you have to set aside time and write it and document it all down as soon as something happens. For instance, I saw over 30 patients today, did about 10 vasectomies. Every single chart has been closed. All the ICD-10 codes that I use, all the CPT codes that I use, all the modifiers that I use, I created it and I closed the chart the same day that I provided the service. Not only is this good for your revenue cycle, it is also compliant and saves you, because there's no way I can remember all the little details 5 patients back. I want to brain dump as quickly as possible after I see the patient so no details are missed. And I highly encourage you to do that. Let's go back to this article. Dr. Shelburne said that he told the prosecutor if he performed a restoration, there was an obvious reason for it. The prosecutor then turned around to the jury box and said, it is not in the record though, is it? And Dr. Shelburne had to say, no, sir, it is not. The prosecutor's response was, I guess we just have to take your word for it. And that is the situation you never want to be in. Let this be an example. Learn from other people's mistakes. Perform the documentation completely, accurately, contemporaneously, no matter what you need to do, what safeguards, what help you need. You want to implement that so that you don't run into trouble like Dr. Shelburne did. Let's go on here. Mistakes happen in all dental offices, Dr. Phillips, the claims review consultant told us, but the dentist has final responsibility for everything that happens in the office. It's hard to oversee every little thing when you are the major income producer for the office and working at the chair all day, but it must be done. And I guarantee you, ask any subject matter expert, any consultant, compliance, coding, billing expert, we're all going to tell you contemporaneous, complete documentation is going to save you. It's going to help you get paid faster, help you get paid more and completely, and potentially keep you out of the limelight, out of jail, out of prison. And sometimes, even with as much perfect documentation as you've done, your claim can still be denied or delayed. I will give you an example. Right now, we have a claim in my office that is over 1.5 years outstanding for a urolift procedure that was audited by some third party contracted by Noridian, our Medicare administrative contractor. The claim is that there's no appropriate signature on the procedure note. And what they don't realize is that in the encounter, the procedure was ordered in the encounter, and that procedure note is part of the encounter. If you print out the procedure note within the electronic health records, it stands alone. There's no signature attached to the bottom of the procedure note. However, that procedure note is part of the encounter in which the procedure was ordered. Without ordering that procedure on the encounter note on the day of the UroLift procedure, I literally cannot document that procedure. So anyway, that procedure in this electronic health records can't be printed out without the signature attached, and that is what they're going after me for not having a signature. Now, going through all the appeals process, now I'm having to appear in front of an administrative law judge to explain this to them later on this month. It is absolutely insane. And to add insult to injury, that first hearing, they gave me the phone number to call, the date and time. I was ready. I held stop clinic, cancel clinic, and guess what? The code that they gave me to log into that call was invalid. They gave me the wrong code, so I could not participate in the administrative law judge hearing. It's a huge, so you've got thousands of dollars outstanding. Now you have to cancel clinic to deal with this BS, which is completely wrong. And the aggravation, right? You're involving your biller, your office manager. Now I have to be involved for something that they could have just looked at the record completely and say, oh yeah, we screwed up. We should pay you. Nope. Third-party contractor. And guess what? The third-party contractor used by Noridian is a contractor that is paid on the amount out of recovery, meaning if they can avoid paying the doctor, they make money, a percentage of that claim that is not paid to the doctor. So the incentives are kind of perverse. And if you have a coding company or a biller who's just going to say, well, you know what, these implants, you're just not going to get paid for it. You're just going to lose the thousands of dollars, and the biller and coder doesn't bring it to your attention, you just lost a lot of money. And not only that, implicitly, you're kind of claiming or admitting fault that, yes, I did not attach a signature to this procedure. Well, heck, if that's the case, I've got thousands of procedures that I've done. If you print out just the procedure portion of the note, there's no signature attached to it, because in the electronic health record, you can simply print out that procedure note. The signature is literally there, and not only is it there, I sign it contemporaneously the day I do the procedure without fail. So even if you do everything correctly, you are subject to audits, and they can still drag you through the ringer. Believe it or not, if they want to maliciously prosecute you, they can. It has happened. And I'm going to have to bring up it was a pain management case where this elderly pain management physician spent time in prison while the trial was carried out. And it ended up, the trial, they were found not guilty, and unfortunately, this physician, elderly pain management doctor, spent time in prison for a crime that he did not commit. The government literally screwed up in the prosecution, but unfortunately, he had to go through prison, spend time in prison. Anyway, let's go back to this article. Dr. Sheldon say, you may say that it's my front desk managers or my financial coordinator's job to make sure procedures are coded correctly or claim forms properly filled out, but ultimately it is the dentist or the physician's responsibility. And this interviewer said, Dr. Shelburne said he remarked then that hindsight is 20/20, and if he could do it all over again, he would take a much more active role in the everyday business operation of his practice. That would include, he said, more in-depth charting and record keeping and implementing a system of checks and balances. And not only are these systems of checks and balances good for the government, for third-party payer auditing, it would be good for you to make sure that there's no internal fraud, internal embezzlement, which happens more commonly than you think. You want to have a system of checks and balances. Not only that, you want to audit your own charts, audit your own documentation. One of the best ways for you to learn as a urologist, physician, and in urology, this is specific to urology, there's a course called Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar put on by PRS Network, also known as the Painters, aka the gurus when it comes to coding, billing, compliance. It is held a couple of times a year. The one that is coming up in December of 2022 will be in Las Vegas, and I will put the link in the video description. You can go to prs.com and you can find it, but I'll put the link in the video description. Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar. The first one will be in December 2022, right after the Medicare final rule is for 2023 is completed. So you'll get the updated information in addition to coding, billing, compliance, the gotchas, the nuances, the modifiers, the new CPTs, the new Medicare changes, the new E&M changes, the upcoming split shared visits in the hospital. That's changing in the upcoming. Actually, it's been delayed for 2023, but it's coming on in 2024. That is going to greatly impact for those of you who have APPs, who see patients in the hospital, and sometimes you see the patient, sometimes you don't. But that is going to greatly impact on your work RVUs and your productivity if you are accounting for that right now by seeing patients in the hospital. That is all changing in 2024. We're also going to go over new technology and other aspects of how to make your practice more efficiently and how you can practice more compliantly, how you can learn the nuances of coding and billing so that you are not missing any money and leaving any money on the table. So UACRS, Urology Advanced Coding and Reimbursement Seminar, I've been attending for many, over 10 years, and I am one of the speakers at the UACRS. So feel free to check it out. I highly recommend it, not because I speak at the conference, but even if I'm not a speaker, I will pay to attend every single year because of all the changes, because of all the compliance reasons. I want to attend and make sure that I can be maximally efficient in the office. All right, let's get back to this article. My message to the dental community is if it's not in the dental record, it doesn't exist. Dr. Shelburne told Henry in a video interview, if you perform a procedure and you don't record it or don't record what you did completely, there's no evidence that you performed that service. And again, just like Medicare says in the E&M guideline, if you didn't document it, you didn't do it. He goes on to say, be careful not only with how you record your services, but how you bill for them. For the most part, we have very dedicated and competent employees who are submitting these claims. However, that claim is a legal and binding document. The information contained in that claim can be binding in terms of how reviewers see the truthfulness and completeness of that billing. Again, complete documentation, however you have to do it. If you have a virtual scribe, if you have a virtual assistant, if you have an in-person scribe, if you're using voice recognition technology has greatly improved since 2010. It is so easy for you to contemporaneously document completely whatever procedure that you just did. There's no reason for you not to do it. All right, let's get back to it. Bill what you did, exactly what you did, and when you did it. Make sure it's done in a timely and an accurate manner, and do your due diligence. Go back, review, make sure that everything you did is on that claim and coded correctly. He also said, I urge all dentists to make sure they know what's going on in their practices in terms of billing, because a mistake is not necessarily a mistake in the eyes of the law. Ignorance is no excuse. We are responsible as practitioners and owners of our businesses for whatever goes out of our offices when it comes to claims. Be very careful, be diligent, and be precise, because you may be called on one day to justify the services you have provided. You should be comfortable saying that this is exactly what I did, and this is what I need to be paid for that service. And in addition, this is exactly why I did what I did. This is exactly why I did what I did. You need documentation to justify the reasoning for performing any procedure, any service that you provide to the patient for medical legal reasons, for compliance reasons, for billing reasons, and to keep you out of prison. All right. If you're interested in more videos, feel free to click over here or over here. I will link it on YouTube. Again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section. All the links that I mentioned will be in the video description. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye-bye.